This video is proudly sponsored by NewType. Tools, accessories, model kits, these guys have it. Hop over to newtypehq.com and use the link below to help this channel out for future builds. Hello and welcome back, my dudes and dudes. Another exciting build from your boy Otaku Builder. And if this is your very first time onto his YouTube channel, welcome. So before I jump into the realm of building mechas, I want to talk about a little gem that I like to call Cyber Troopers Virtuon. Released back in 1995 in the arcades utilizing the Model 1 engine by SEGA's internal team AM2, Virtuon was a unique fighting game. In fact, it was one of the very first arena fighting games that ever came out in the late 90s. And in that time, SEGA really improved their Model 1 engine, eventually moved on to Model 2 with their successor Virtual Fighter and Virtual Fighter 2. The list goes on, but we're talking about a game that is definitely the equivalent of comfort food, and we're going to be talking about Virtuon, the granddaddy poster boy himself, Temjin. And what I love about this box art is Kotobukiya really nailed the classic 90s art aesthetic, the classic bold saturated colors that make things really pop up with these classic like 3D render designs. I love that. And even down to the actual box art, the way how Temjin looks with the nice pastel blues and the bold yellows and just the overall aesthetic of it. It's just, I've always wanted this mech for so many years, and I finally get the opportunity to build it. Now, of course, I did build the 144 scale, developed, I believe, from Wave, and it was good, but not as good as this quality. So, without further ado, let's take a look what's inside. But first thing I love about the instruction manual, it's just, simple, clean, elegant. I love it. Nice clean front shot of Temjin in the front, and then when you flip it over, you get a nice backside scene, the SEGA SATURN, which I love that little aesthetic they add to these little Virtuoids. So let's dig a little deeper inside the instruction manual. Now, the instruction does give you a glimpse on the weapon accessories that Temjin does have, but the kit only comes with the beam saber / assault rifle weapon accessories. Now, as for the actual parts themselves, they're very straightforward, easy to follow, but there is no foreseeable like inner frame for Temjin. There's like the head, the torso, maybe some parts around the thighs, which by no means this is not a bad thing. In the video game, there was brief moments when you did lose your armaments, you did see the actual inner part of the frame of the Virtuoid, which is not bad. And at the same time, it's kind of cool that they incorporate just some of that simple aesthetics. Now, as for movable parts, the SEGA SATURN does have like these open flaps that exposes the boosters. The model kit does not come with an actuator base, so you have to purchase that separately, but the crowning jewel of this model kit is the unique color scheme. Now, when it comes to actually getting these particular colors, I have to say that Mr. Hobby isn't the right way to go. These are very, and I mean very specific types of blues, warm whites, and bright, I mean very bright to subtle yellowish orange parts. So what do we need to do to make this effect look as accurate as possible? And I'm pretty comfortable to say that I found the right kind of brand that was going to work with this. Giga is the best way to go with it. Not only do they have two different tones of gloss and matte, the gloss coat itself, it's very, very clean, easy to work with compared to all the other competitors out there. Plus, Giga is highly recommended paint to be used for any of these Virtuon model kits to make them look as game accurate. So I'm glad I was able to get a hand of these when I did. Now, without further ado, it's time to finally get started building my all-time mech that I've been dying to build for the last 40 plus years. Let's get to it.
Flooded City.
So normally when I get started doing these builds, I usually have a system. Torso, head, arms, etc. Now this one, I want to put all my energy on the SEGA SATURN. Originally I was planning on putting in 2 LEDs, but since I am working with very, very limited cavity space here and also juggling with capacitors for the first time, I need to really pick and choose areas that I really want to shine the most. And right now, every jewel that's on this model kit, I want them to pop. So for now, I'm going to keep the color scheme consistent with the actual SEGA SATURN, white, black, and then added the little details of the buttons afterwards. And then I'll be hitting it with a flat black primer behind it, so that way it helps reduce any kind of ghosting effect from the very bright LED. Alright, so so now that these parts are properly masked, it's now time to get to the next step of installing the LED. But before I do that, I need to create an alcove in which the one single LED needs to sit comfortably without creating an unnecessarily weird hotspot onto the clear part. So I'm going to create a little divot here and there so that way there's plenty of cavity space there in which the LED can sit rest comfortably. And then once that's done, I'll be hitting the actual clear parts on top with a flat black primer. Ooh, that's looking really good. I like it. So now comes the next fun part. Now that I got this beautifully clean gem, I need to help diffuse it with some paint. Now I've been using this technique for quite some time, but essentially what I'm going to be using is the exact same white for that we'll be using for the whole entire model kit, and use this model paint very lightly behind the clear pieces to create a nice little diffusion effect. If it doesn't have the diffusion, you get like this weird, bright, unnecessarily weird glow off of the clear bits. That's what I'm going to help reduce it. By adding some form of light diffusion, it actually evenly lights the actual clear part the way how it's supposed to, as well as the way how it looks in the video game. Holy cow, this turned out better than I expected. Okay, mad props to Kotobukiya. I'm really capturing the essence and the game accuracy on how these boosters would look if they actually were like in a fully functional mech. Not only they got the engineering on point, but the fact that they actually incorporated a nice little CD on top of that makes this thing really shine. So fortunate for me, I had some spare leftover chrome to make this effect look really cool. Again, it's not CD accurate the way how it's portrayed in the video game, but I think just nice to have something that's reflective at the same time, make this part shine the way how it looks in real life aesthetics. I'm happy how this looks, and I'm very pleased how the SEGA SATURN turned out. So now comes the next challenging part, and that's actually painting the inner frame pieces. Now, I've already taken the liberty of alcoving the spot for which the two visors will sit for Temjin's head. Again, this is something I took out of the video because it was very long and the video was getting a little too lengthy, so I took a liberty to do that off screen. Now as for the feet, parts around the arms, as well as parts around the thighs, I'm going to be doing that off screen by hitting it with a flat black primer and then using a neutral gray to make those parts really pop out. So that part's done. There's no need to actually show a video of that. The next challenging part was actually creating an alcove for the first visor for the head, which by no means is not an easy thing to do. This thing is very fragile and very delicate to work with, so I chose not to have any video recorded of that because I really want to focus on my energy and not messing up. So I do apologize for not having that content available, but it is done, it's ready to go, and now it's time to actually paint this bad boy. Okay, so now that these parts are finally painted, it's now time to get started on the next challenging thing, and that is incorporating all these LEDs and funneling all the electrical wiring down to the abdomen. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to be focusing on the head, which is going to be requiring 2 LEDs, followed by the shoulder patch. Each one incorporates 2 LEDs, so now we're up to 2, followed by the forearm, so that's 3, both sides, that equals up to 6. In total, 2 LEDs around the torso area, and then take all that electrical wiring, all those capacitors, and funneling down to the abdomen area. This part's extremely delicate, at the same time incredibly difficult to work with.
Pull me into the fight. You got a hold on me now, baby. You got electric love. It's taking me up even higher. You're running all through me now, baby. You got electric love. Just one time, but now you're coming over.
Looks incredible. Very happy how this turned out. I'm very happy with this, and plus doing an LED test on the side, it looks great. Now we're going to move on to the next part, and that's going to be parts around the forearms as well as the feet. Now the feet do require a little bit of a customization, especially parts around the sole of the foot. That's fine. The gray we're going to be using there for the bottom part, it's going to pretty much be the exact same gray for the inner frame. So that part's not going to be too difficult. That can easily be done. But I did come across my very first hurdle on this model kit. Needless to say, the LEDs weren't the biggest challenge part here. It was getting the color accuracy just right. So when I was using Gika's orange yellow, there was a problem there. the colors themselves were way too down desaturated. I wasn't really happy with that. And as you can see here from the reference here, when you look at it inside the cup, it's very translucent. And I did juggle the ratio by making it a little thinner, a little thicker, and trying to get the color consistency there, maybe add a little bit more coat. I wasn't getting the color that I wanted, so I went to Mr. Hobby 58, Mr. Orange and Yellow, and then add a little bit more orange to it to make it pop out just right, and man, the results are night and day. Not only Mr. Hobby is a little bit more thicker compared to its counterpart, Giga being a little bit more transparent, not only was I able to pull off the more accurate orange, but at the same time, I got the aesthetic looking just right. And as you can see here from the final results, I'm very happy with the results. Now it's coming down to painting the other additional parts of the model kit with some light gray. The light gray will be applied on the very front of the feet as well as parts around the neck, and then that's pretty much it. Now it's time to install the LEDs shortly afterwards. Alright, my dudes and dudettes, we have reached the next challenging part in this build, and that is taking all that electrical wiring and funneling it through down to the torso, down to the abdomen, and down to the waist section. Now once again, I have to reiterate this again. There is zero chance of this working out successfully at this point because there is very little cavity space to work with. I tried my best of alcoving so much of that excess plastic inside the area to make room for the capacitors, and in that test fit, I came to the conclusion that having this model kit being able to be posed in at least 5 to 6 dynamic poses wasn't going to be a thing. This model kit is going to need to be static on some form of pedestal. So the way to work around this is I'm going to need to drill in 2 key points into each key area under using polystyrene pieces. And then once I got the angle just right, I'm going to try my best to alcove as more plastic as I can, because the biggest challenge here is damaging a capacitor or stripping one of the wires. So I'll do my best to get as much of the plastic out of there while incorporating all those electrical wires down to the waist section. As long as I can hide the capacitors and deal with the excess wires, I can work with this towards the very end. Alright, my dudes and dudes, so I felt this part was really important to incorporate in the video so you guys can understand what I'm dealing with. So here is the ratness of wires that I have to work with. All those capacitors, all those individual strands, thick and thin wires, all that needs to be condensed into one spot. So here is the area that I did my best of alcoving so much of the excess plastic in which I can try to cram in as many capacitors as possible. So I'll try applying some on the left while incorporating the leftovers on the right side. So that shouldn't be a problem at all of any of the capacitors rupturing or impacting one another. But then comes the next challenging part. Since in the past of doing some research, I have noticed other builders that have built this model kit and kept it into one static pose. And you boys, you know me, I want to try to get this bad boy in one dynamic poses. So I had the bright idea of using the promotion work that was already shown to me right at the beginning of this video. Why not keep it in that one stoic like hero pose that you'd see in the promotional work? And you know what? I'm actually happy with that final decision, because not only I can pull off like a nice like simple air pose, but I can at least cram at least 2 to 3 dynamic poses to make this guy look really cool. So I'm happy with this decision towards the very end. My dude, so as I'm getting ready to test fit things, I'm starting to notice that I need just a little bit of room for the actual abdomen waist section there. As you can see here, there's still a good thickness of wires that are still there, but that's not going to be a problem because I'll be actually drilling the 2 holes like I mentioned earlier in the video to lock it into one pose. This is the part that I'll be incorporating the 2 polystyrene pieces from Evergreens, and then at the same time leaving just enough of a gap there to leave the wires there to breathe. You don't want to impact it too much. You don't want to apply unnecessary pressure because that will strip and break the wire.
to be seen again.
Okay, so as I'm walking things down, I know I totally forgot to mention this part of the video, so I just did deliberately just doing it anyway. So the sword itself, once again, same kind of dilemma, very limited cavity space. There's only so much I can do at putting in as many LEDs as I want. The original plan was to incorporate 3 LEDs, or at least 4 to 5 for both top and bottom of the jewels, but I feel 2 will be justifiable enough because it'll be facing one direction. Again, this is the limitations I have working with these capacitors, as well as limited cavity space in which to pull off this effect. But overall, I'm happy how it turned out. Alright, my dudes and dudettes, this model kit is turning out to be really something. I'm very happy how the overall color scheme looks. Everything is flowing beautifully. And last thing I need to do is apply the water slide decals, which isn't going to be a hard thing. But my biggest dilemma is coming up with a unique way of displaying this beautiful piece of artwork. So I had 2 alternatives. One, use a Kotobukiya kit or try something drastically different. I went with the drastically different approach because the adapter that comes with this Kotobukiya kit, it's good. But the Kotobukiya display base has been on the short side, so I thought to myself, I'm going to swing it over to my good folks from Burg Hobbies and pick up a brass rod. Apply a Tamiya gray primer onto it, and then apply a Mr. Hobby black primer on top of it, and give you a nice clean matte black finish. Now that that is established, we need to go on stage 2. And that is developing a unique display base. Now, I could just put something standard underneath it and then one and done it, but I want to do something really cool. So, a couple of months ago, I picked up these 1/44 scale display bases at my local mall, and I thought these would be great for a future project. Didn't know it would be incorporated on this particular build, but there is a definite size consistency problem. If I put this bad boy on top of this display, it makes this mecha look like it's a giant kaiju from outer space, and I don't want that. Definitely a scale issue. But then I thought to myself, I have a spare 1/60th scale display base that I have not used for quite some time, and I thought to myself, this would be a good fit for Temjin. Again, space is an issue, but then I had the bright idea of picking up this SEGA SATURN model kit that was on sale from New Type HQ. Hopefully it's still on sale right now, and I thought this would be a great addition to celebrate Virtual On, the game, as well as the game console in which I played on for the very first time. So I'm gonna go with the art direction of doing a deconstructed SEGA SATURN display base to make this guy look really cool, while adding a motor in there to rotate the actual CD. So after contemplating with myself on what color I was going to paint the SEGA SATURN, whether it was going to be white, gray, grayish brown, I went with the neutral gray because that's the color I grew up with when I was younger. But then I had the bright idea, I've already come this far by actually installing a motor to rotate the CD. Why don't I take that energy of adding a couple LEDs? So I then had the bright idea of incorporating 2 LEDs. One was going to be the green for the power supply, while the other blinking red was going to be the CD reader. Now this feature itself is not on the US console. This is something that's very Japanese exclusive, but I definitely wanted to showcase a lot of love and attention on this small little detail. And you know what? At the end results, I'm very happy how this turned out. Alright, my dudes and duds, we have finally reached the home run stretch, and now it's time to incorporate a permanent power supply adapter. So I have been using Evgeny designed USB adapters for quite some time in my previous builds, but since the voltage is now kicked up to 5 volts, I need to make sure that I have a voltage that is compatible with the motor to turn on the SEGA SATURN as well as turn on the actual model kit. Now that those two are actually done and now they are established, now I need to share with you the hidden feature for this model kit. This is a custom breathing LED circuit for the Temjin model kit. Now this is something that I could not hide inside the model kit because, once again, limited cavity space, but since there is sufficient cavity space inside the SEGA SATURN, I can actually pull off this effect not only beautifully, but at the same time make it look nice and clean and professional. Ugh, super excited how this turned out.
Mission complete. Virtual operation system interruption. Player minute free.
Alright, my dudes and dudettes, as this video is wrapping up, I want to share with you guys my thoughts and impressions on the Temjin model kit, but let me throw this back a bit. When I delve back into the world of Virtual On, it holds a special part to me, right? It was the franchise that got me into robots. It was the key reason why I wanted to get back into doing something that was art related, whether it was character design or game art design. Virtual On set the tone of what I wanted to do for an art career as well as making content on YouTube. And when I worked on the version of Temjin from Virtual Operation Tangram or Otaku Tangram, I forget how it's pronounced, this bad boy was the challenge. I had to work with two different types of blues, bright and soft orange, tons of detail on this bad boy. I was really ahead of myself when it came to work on this model kit, but I always wanted to build the OG one because that was really got me into really building Gunpla model kit for quite some time. And when I finished this bad boy back in the day, I was very happy how it turned out. But I had to work with this nasty extended power supply because I had to work with all these electrical wires really interconnected to this model kit to make it look really good. And keep in mind, there was way more clear parts for this model kit back in the day. So literally 5 years later, I wanted to work on the OG Temjin. And I want to try something really unique. And may I introduce to you dudes and dudettes, the MBV-04-G Temjin, the OG one. And man, I couldn't be happier how it turned out. Not only I was able to capture that old school breathing effect with all the little gems, but I was able to incorporate it with my all-time favorite SEGA console next to the Sega Dreamcast. But the SEGA SATURN holds a really sweet spot in my heart because this was like the first game console that my mother got for me back when I was like, I think 13 or 12. And it was a really sweet birthday present because when I picked this bad boy up, I had no idea I was going to get any games for it. So when I picked up at Toys R Us back in the day, not only I got 3 games, Virtual Cop, Virtual Fighters 2, and I believe Daytona was a demo disc, but I think it was those 3. I was hooked. And then shortly afterwards, when I got hooked into the realm of Sega once again, after taking a huge hiatus from the Sega Genesis, I jumped into the world of Virtual On. Mainly because of the fact that I was kind of in a weird limbo phase on what I really wanted to like as a kid. Sure, I grew up with Transformers, Robotech, and even a handful of B movies that were out during the old 90s. genre, especially like RoboCop. Mech genres was a relatively new genre to me. And Virtuon really satisfied that itch because not only this game was really unique for what it was doing at the time, utilizing a twin stick configuration at the arcade cabinets, but it was a very bold statement on trying to experiment with the genre of arena fighters. And Virtuon had a great range of mech designs ranging from Temjin, Vic Viper, Finn Yin, Bao Bash Bao, just to name a few, and even my all-time second favorite Virtuoid, Raiden. This design architecture really staples what the 90s was all about. Sharp geometric shapes, nice streamlined shapes on top of the weapon accessories, some organic shapes here and there on the legs, and very, and I might have to say, over-exaggerated feet design. But with that over-exaggeration, certain proportions, it makes this guy scream nostalgia, that classic 90s look. And even building this kit almost 30 years later, it holds a special spot to my heart. And I love it. I love it, and I'm excited how well it turned out because what I was able to pull off compared to its predecessor, which I should have jumped on this one first, but I jumped on that one, I was able to utilize the really unique feature of really pulling off the breathing LED effect. So you're probably asking yourself, what are the pros and cons in this model kit? Now, besides the insane price tag, you can't really do much when it comes to posability. Same thing can say with its predecessor, the version of Temjin 2. Shoulder motion is probably the most unique feature on this model kit. It has a really good 45-degree bend on top and bottom. There's these open hatches around the shoulders towards the very end that can pivot upward to give you more range of motion. As for the abdomen, that's where things get kind of sad. There is no front or back to side crunch. It's on a ballpoint peg, so it's supposed to interconnect from the top to the bottom, which leaves a lot to deal with, which is using it in a static pose. The leg motion, you get a nice bend from the knee to the back. You don't get a toe pin for the foot, which is really unfortunate, but at the same time, it's not detrimental to this design at all. But what makes up for its lack of limitations for its posability is the sheer 90s nostalgic vibe you get from it. And I like that. As for any other nitpicks I can really say about this model kit, I would say probably the most frustrating part on this build was definitely installing the clear parts. They don't really specify correctly on the instruction manual, but you definitely need to use a little dab of like slow drying glue. And when you incorporate it on there, you have to like place it and leave it alone. Me installing LEDs on this model kit was definitely a challenge because I was working with a different type of voltage. I normally work with 3 volts. This time I had to kick it up to 5. And the reason why I had to kick it up to 5 is because in order to incorporate, here, let me show you. In order to incorporate the breathing LED effect for this model kit, I had to boost up the electrical voltage with its own separate circuit. So in order to pull off this cool breathing effect like you would see here, it need a higher voltage. And I'm very happy how it turned out. Not only was I able to incorporate that with this model kit, but I was able to actually create a nice rotating feature for the actual disc while authentically indicating the 2 LED lights that sit in the very front of the SEGA SATURN, indicating the CD reader as well as the LED light stating that it's turned on. Now, my only downside with this experience is I did lose 2 LEDs around the feet. It's just, you know, this just happens to deal with the limitations of the LED wiring from Evans Designs. That's just how it is. I really wish I was able to incorporate more LEDs around the sword. My initial plan was to put at least 3, maybe 4 LEDs, but I was only able to incorporate 2. This is due to the fact that there's very, and I mean very little cavity space in this model kit. So I had to work what I needed to work with, and I'm very happy how it turned out. But overall, I really wanted to focus on a model kit that was really special to me. After what I went through with the Eden Fire, I needed something that was like a big distraction. Sure, I worked on Voyager 2 months ago, but I really wanted to work on something that not only celebrated the fact that I'm getting older, but the foundation, the inspiration, the love I love for robots. I wanted to build something that was near and dear to me, and I finally was able to accomplish that. Not only pulling off the accurate color scheme, some would argue it probably needs some more of a pastel blue, but the nice dark and mid blue, it pulls off the look just beautifully. And incorporating the LEDs, regardless of the fact that I was dealing with the limitations of working with tons of like electrical wires and very sensitive capacitors, and also working with very limited cavity space, I'm very happy how it turned out. My only downside with this model kit is the price. Me being a diehard SEGA fan will buy this in an instant, but even now with the current climate of how the economy is like very finicky, it's very, and I mean very difficult to really recommend this for anyone that's an experienced, a pro builder, a casual builder, and even someone that's a diehard SEGA fan. The model kit is really too expensive, especially for something that has only one weapon accessory, no action base, no LED light gimmick, and the only thing that's really selling it to you is the fact that it's a testament to the classic mech design of the early 90s. But if you were like me, 12-year-old James, trying to find any means to try to get this amazing game that was being sold at the time, it was like $50, and you're willing to mow anyone's yard, do any kind of babysitting, and you just got tired of seeing this bad boy at Circuit City, good guys, I'm going as far as say the warehouse. This kit's for you, because for me it was a true testament for me to become more independent. My mom gave me the money to buy the SEGA SATURN for my birthday. And with that special surprise, I got 3 games that completely changed my life on how I saw the video game industry at the ripe age of 12. And now, at the peak age of 42, heading on to 43, I don't have any regrets buying this model kit. Not one bit. Not one bit. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys found this video somewhat informative, at the same time entertaining in many aspects of taking more of a deep dive on what I love and truly enjoy in the world of mecha anime. But now that that is done, it's time to take a delve into the past of something that is very cherishable. Some would say it requires a certain type of metal. Others would say you need a battle for it. I say it's long overdue for us to get started building Metabots. Alright my dudes, I'll catch you all in the next video. Later.
Yeah, no.